Okay, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to explore something called the lifespan perspective. Think of it as a whole new map for understanding how we grow and change throughout our entire lives.
So let me kick things off with a big question. Do you think our development just stops once we become adults? For the longest time, the common wisdom was that we grow up, hit our peak in our 20s, and then it's just a slow, steady decline. But what if that's not the real story at all? And this slide really lays out that shift in thinking perfectly. On the left, you've got the traditional view. You grow up, you level off, you decline. Simple. But the lifespan view on the right completely flips that script. It says, no way. Development is a continuous, ongoing process of growth, change, and stability that literally lasts from the moment we're conceived until the very end of our lives.
So, to really get our heads around this, here's our game plan. First, we're going to rethink what development even means. Then, we'll get into the core principles from the main architect of this idea, Paul Baltus. After that, we'll look at all the different contexts that shape our lives, and we'll even touch on a big debate: is change a smooth ride or a series of sudden jumps? And finally, we'll wrap up with why all of this really matters.
All right, let's jump into Section 1, Rethinking Human Development. This is all about seeing our lives not as a short sprint, but as a complete, lifelong journey.
So the formal definition here is super important. Lifespan development isn't just a nice thought. It's a scientific field. That means people are systematically studying the patterns of how we grow, change, and stay the same, not just as kids, but across our entire lives. We're talking about everything: our bodies, our brains, our friendships, the whole shebang.
And that brings us to one of the giants in this field, Paul Baltus. And his point here is huge. He's saying that no single age, not your childhood, not your teens, not middle age, gets to be the most important period of development. Every single stage of life contributes to who we are. Every single stage matters. So what are the actual building blocks of this perspective? Let's get into Section 2 and check out Baltus' core principles. These are really the fundamental ideas that everything else is built on.
First up, development is multidimensional. This just means we don't change in only one way at a time. Think about it. Your body changes biologically, your thinking changes cognitively, your relationships change socially. And here's the kicker: all of those dimensions are tangled up together. A change in one can, and usually does, cause ripples in the others.
Second, and this one is so fascinating, development is multidirectional. This means that at any point in your life, some things are getting better while other things might be declining. For instance, someone in their 40s might have more wisdom and expertise than ever before. That's a gain. But at the same time, maybe they can't run as fast as they used to. That's a loss. It's this constant dance between gains and losses.
Third, and this is such a hopeful idea, is that development is plastic. Plasticity is just a fancy word for our capacity to change. It means our traits aren't carved in stone. Our experiences, our environment, even our own choices can literally reshape our developmental path at any age. It means there's always potential to learn, to grow, and to adapt.
And finally, development is multidisciplinary. This is the perspective's way of saying, hey, people are complicated. You can't understand the whole story of a human life just by looking through one lens, like psychology. You need insights from biology, from sociology, from neuroscience, from anthropology. You need all of them working together to even begin to see the full picture. So, just to pull all that together real quick, this table is a great summary. Development is lifelong, it's multidimensional, it's multidirectional, it's plastic, and it's multidisciplinary. It's a really dynamic and complex view of how we become who we are.
But here's the thing, none of this happens in a bubble, right? We don't just develop in a vacuum. So for Section 3, let's talk about the context of our lives, all the outside forces that shape us.
So developmentalists have kind of sorted these influences into three big buckets. We've got normative age-graded influences, normative history-graded influences, and then non-normative life events. Let's break down what each of those means.
First up, normative age-graded influences. Normative just means typical, or the norm. So these are the predictable things that are tied to how old we are. Biologically, that's stuff like puberty or menopause. Socially, it's things like starting school around age 5 or retiring in your 60s. They're the milestones most of us hit around the same time.
Next, we have normative historically graded influences. These are the big historical events that shape an entire generation, or what scientists call a cohort. Think about how growing up during the Great Depression, or being part of the generation that saw the internet explode, or living through 9/11 would fundamentally shape your outlook on the world.
And finally, there are the non-normative life events. These are the wild cards. They're unusual, often unpredictable things that have a massive impact on one person's life, but not on most people's. They could be tragic, like losing a loved one unexpectedly, or they could be amazing, like winning the lottery. They're the personal turning points that make our stories unique.
And this is a really great way to picture how all these influences fit together. This model basically shows you at the center, surrounded by these nested layers of influence, from your family and friends right up close, to your community, and then to the broader culture you live in. All these layers are constantly interacting and shaping who you are.
Okay, section 4. So we know that we change, and we know some of the things that influence that change. But what does the change itself actually look like? Is it a slow, smooth ramp-up, or is it more like a series of sudden, distinct steps? This is a classic debate in the field.
And this slide lays out the two sides of that debate pretty clearly. On the left, you've got continuous change. The idea here is that development is gradual and cumulative, like a tree getting taller, inch by inch. On the right is discontinuous change, which sees development happening in abrupt stages. It's more like a caterpillar suddenly transforming into a butterfly. It's not just more of the same, it's a totally different kind of thing. And what's really cool is, the answer might be, it just depends on how you look at it. This visual shows that from one angle, development might look like a smooth, continuous ramp. From another, it might look like a set of distinct steps. But if you zoom in really close, it might look even more complex, like a series of overlapping waves. So maybe it's not an either-or question after all.
Okay, let's bring it all home. Section 5. Why does any of this actually matter? What's the big picture takeaway here?
Well, here it is. The lifespan perspective gives us a much more accurate and, frankly, much more hopeful way of understanding our own lives. It throws out that simple, old story of grow, peak, decline. And instead, it shows us that life is this rich, dynamic journey, full of gains and losses, shaped by all sorts of influences, and, most importantly, that we always have the capacity to change and grow.
And so, I'll leave you with a final question to think about. When you look back on your own life's journey, which of these influences do you think has had the biggest hand in shaping who you are today? Was it the predictable, age-graded stuff, the historical moments you lived through, or was it those unique, non-normative events that made your story yours?